Stefon Diggs and Chase Brown's fantasy stock are trending up, while Joe Mixon's and Terry McLaurin's are trending down. We discuss on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we are going to discuss some players that their fantasy stock is trending up as of, the end of July 28th, and a couple guys who are trending down, whether it's due to injury or maybe a fake injury, I don't want to say, with Terry McLaurin, but we'll discuss our thoughts about that. He is at training camp, just not practicing while he waits for that new contract. But let's start with the guys who are trending up, and maybe their fantasy rankings will be going up here soon. And that has to start with Stefon Diggs, who we got news. I mean, he has been cleared to practice. He got hurt, tore his ACL in the middle of last year. And normally with that timeline of an injury, you're going to miss at least the first 4 weeks of the season on the PUP list. But it does seem like he has a real chance to be ready to go for week one. He's out there practicing. He's running with the first team. And it seems like he's perfectly fine at this moment. He's ranked as a wide receiver 42 in consensus rankings. We would expect that to increase the more that there's news out there that he's practicing and he's good to go. But that seems really, really low for a guy who was the wide receiver 19 on average last year in the games he did play with Houston, averaging 12.3 points per game. And he's the clear wide receiver one on this Patriots offense with Drake May. So how high should we be pushing Stefon Diggs up if he is ready to go in week one, Vinny?
Yeah, I think he's near where his value is going to be. I think you take him as a wide receiver too. You have to also account for this Patriots offense and saying, where's the cap here? We do like Drake May as a sleeper, and it is key for a person like Stefon Diggs to deliver for him if that's going to be the case, and Drake May is going to please us in fantasy. So I'm looking at basically Stefon Diggs and Hunter Henry. Henry is a security blanket type tight end and has helped younger quarterbacks in the year a little before, but Stefon Diggs can do that for a younger quarterback. We saw that with Josh Allen in Buffalo. Then they didn't need him. They had to move on. They had some things developed there where Diggs is going to be professional. I know he's sometimes hard to deal with. I mean, looking at Minnesota and Buffalo, sometimes he can be a headache for people in the building, but here he gets a fresh start and they need him. And he realizes a really good landing spot for him where he's going to automatically ascend to one. And there's been a lot of good reports about Drake May and Diggs developing chemistry. That's important as well, because again, it's a second-year quarterback starting full-time for the first time. And then this is also getting in a grasp of a new receiver that he hasn't had a chance to work with all offseason long. So those reports are just as important. Where does Drake May look a lot in practice? I'm not concerned about all the minutia about how many incompletions he's throwing or how many interceptions he's throwing. I would like to see who he's confident in, where he's making his best throws, and Diggs has been that very early in his action with man camp.
We were surprised by Stefon Diggs last year because, it seemed like he was falling off at the end of his career with the Bills. We know how dominant he was there for a few years with Josh Allen, but it seemed like maybe he hit the age where he wasn't going to be able to put up great production anymore. Now, I don't ever expect him to get back to the early Bills years and be a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy, but he surprised us last season with still being very productive with the Texans, even competing against Nico Collins and Tank Dell when they were out there. But he was a good touchdown scorer there to start the year. And then he was putting up some really solid production through receptions and receiving yards and getting a decent amount of targets. Like he earned those on a team that it wasn't like he was a clear-cut wide receiver one. And when you're looking at this Patriots team, I mean, right now they say the starting wide receivers that are running are Stefon Diggs, Demario Douglas, and Kayshon Boutte, right? We'll see if Kyle Williams can take over Boutte or Douglas. But for now, that's the starters. He has a clear grasp on this job. Would you be surprised if he saw 130 targets this year if he can stay healthy? So I do think he needs to move up. I think in the somewhere in the wide receiver 20s, I think is very fair, because right now he's going behind guys like Jaden Reed and Khalil Shakir and Jacoby Myers, Juwan Jennings, and Chris Godwin. I would prefer Diggs to all of those guys. Definitely trending up. And now I think we also have to say Drake May should be trending up as well, because if he has wide receiver one out there, that's huge for him. Now, Chase Brown's the other guy that I wanted to bring up as a big trending up right now. And I mean, there's only so much he can trend up. He's already running back 11 in rankings. However, I do think that he's right there with all the other guys that are ranked ahead of him. I think it's very, very close when you're comparing Chase Brown to a Christian McCaffrey or Devin Achane or Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, all guys going from running back 6 through 10 ahead of Chase Brown. I think he belongs in that same exact tier with those guys, with what he did at the second half of the season. And Bengals coaches and players have been really high on Chase Brown this offseason. But there's a tweet out there from Jory Epstein, a Yahoo reporter, that says Dan Pitcher, the OC of the Bengals, stated, "I think Chase Brown is going to, by the end of the season, be a household name. He's everything that Austin Eckler was. I think that by the time the season's over, you'll all know who he is." So I do expect Chase Brown to just be a complete and total workhorse back for this offense. They really don't have anyone behind him. Zach Moss was in competition with him last year. He's still out with the injury, and even if he comes back like Chase Brown, I still think has a strong hold on this job. And the second half of the season, when he was the clear lead back for this team, he was the running back 5 in fantasy from weeks 9 through 18. So I think he's trending up. I think his running back 11 value is a really, really great value. And I think if you're playing the tier-based drafting, I really don't see that big of a difference between him or even a Derrick Henry, who's sitting there right now running back 5. I wouldn't be shocked if Chase Brown had actually ended ahead of Derrick Henry in fantasy points next year.
Yeah, this is looking really good if you're picking in the back end of a snake draft, where you can end up with a top wide receiver and come back with Chase Brown. And that's where his value is going to stand, right? Michelle is positive about this, where you can't really move him up too much. You're getting a little risky, but it's not crazy if you do. Like, if you really like him and you know what he did down the stretch last season, and he has that potential of finishing as a top 5 running back with also his receiving ability, don't forget about that. He's pretty good at doing that. So that can pad his stats. He's good in the red zone, which surprised me a little bit last year. Just a smaller, compact back. But again, he reminds me again a lot of Austin Eckler. And we know that Eckler started out as a fantasy asset. He was a bit unheralded. Then he exploded. He had those big seasons with scoring. So that definitely could happen with Chase Brown in the near future. And the other thing you have to look at it, Michelle's looking at the depth chart. I mean, yeah, Zach Moss is hurting. Then you have Todd Brooks, who's basically a rookie. And then, well, he is a rookie. He's not basically. He's still learning. He's a 5th-round pick. But then you look at Samaje Perine, good old Samaje Perine. He's back in the mix. Was once their kind of change of pace, if you want to call it, receiving down back. So whatever. So when you look at that backfield situation, they haven't really tried to get anyone to compete with him either. So they're not just talking the talk, they're backing it up by their depth chart. So again, they're probably not worrying too much about Zach Moss based on Chase Brown's upside, but I'm excited to see what he can do in year 2. He's a very talented back end. Eckler, I think, is a fair comparison. And again, that should also tell you that he has a bit of a ceiling as well that he can still explore on this team.
Yeah, he should be the 3rd target on this team outside of Chase Brown or Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. He could be that next target on the team. And if T. Higgins goes down like he typically does, then there's more targets to go around. And they'll probably, lean on that run game a little bit more as well. But so many scoring opportunities for Chase Brown around the goal line too in this offense. So really, really interested in him at his cost. And I think he's trending up at the moment. We're going to discuss one unit that's trending up and another player that's trending up. And then we'll get to 2 guys who are trending down to finish up today's episode. But let's take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors.
All right, it's almost that time of year, and we're going to help you dominate with fantasy football drafts. And this episode is presented to you by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat. get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, Michelle and I are going to be playing on Yahoo Fantasy again. I've been there for more than 20 seasons, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran, making your millionth league. That's about where I am on Yahoo Fantasy. I trust Yahoo Fantasy plenty, years and years of just seeing their draft boards and their gameplay during the season. I love it. It's how smooth everything is, and the draft day is great. The experience continues throughout the season. I've been doing it for a while because I love the easy setup. It auto renews. It has a great mobile app where I can change lineups on the go very easily in seconds, and the Smack Talk just hits different when you're working on the Yahoo message board. So that's a lot of fun. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins August 4th. Stay tuned to get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet, only at Yahoo Fantasy. All right, Michelle, time to continue the show and more of this stock watch that we're looking at, the fallout of training camp, early days of training camp. We're not even into August. Some things you need to know already. We're on top of it here in Locked On Fantasy Football. Let's look at this Bills wide receiver situation. We're trying to sort this one out because what we're doing is mining for values, right? We're mining for a value with the Patriots and Diggs. Now, Diggs' former team here trying to get a second guy that they can trust, really a one, right? Khalil Shakir is ranked as wide receiver 40, but we're interested in the two guys that are after him on the board at wide receiver 52 and wide receiver 71. Keon Coleman and Joshua Palmer. Remember him with the Chargers? So what are you seeing news-wise from these guys that we're feeling good about moving them up, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, Keon Coleman's definitely getting the hype train right now out of camp with big plays that are being made. Now, these were before the pads came on, and it's very easy to make really impressive catches when you're not playing, the full defensive coverages and you don't have your pads on. So definitely, don't take it don't take it like cement information here, but he is getting a ton of hype, and they need him to step up, right? He was basically a first round pick. I know he went right at the top of the second round. They moved back from the first round to just move back, and they felt comfortable taking Keon Coleman last year. And it was a very disappointing year one, only one big game on the year, but he was raw, and they needed him, they need him to step up as this outside wide receiver because Khalil Shakir is just that smaller slot. Dalton Kincaid is just a big miss at tight end, and he's already missing practice with knee soreness now. So we keep trying to give this guy chances, and it just is very underwhelming from him. And Joshua Palmer, I think, is a really, really nice signing. And I think if I had to take a shot on either Khalil Shakir or Joshua Palmer for fantasy, I mean, Palmer's going 31 picks after, and Josh Allen can't stop talking up Palmer. And I guess he's been a huge highlight of the Bills training camp so far as well. And somehow Joshua Palmer's only 25 years old. I did not realize how young he was still. But Josh Allen had to say about Joshua Palmer that he has the best catch radius that he's ever been around, which is very interesting. But he's running with the starters right now. So if I'm taking a shot on either of these Bills wide receivers, it's definitely not Shakir who's going first. It's Keon Coleman, who has way higher upside if he hits, right? Or it's Palmer, who I think has similar upside or downside to Shakir. Shakir just offers you really nothing there besides volume. But even if he gets a lot of volume, it's 8 to 10 fantasy points. So I'm out on Shakir, but I do think Keon Coleman and even Josh Palmer are trending up right now.
Yeah, I mean, it is an opportunity for someone to step through. And it's interesting because they moved on from Diggs, and then they moved on also from Gabe Davis, right? At the same time last year. So they kind of blew up what they were doing at wide receiver, where Diggs was the dominant go-to guy. They worked in the tight ends a little bit. Shakir was kind of a slot at times for them. And then you didn't know what you're going to get for the deep threat to replace Gabe Davis. Now, I think Coleman and Palmer are more of that position, right? And we've seen it with Palmer with the Chargers. He's been a super sub at times when they've needed someone to step in. When either Keenan Allen or Mike Williams was unavailable, Josh Palmer stepped in. He was pretty solid. I've always liked him. I think he's a professional guy that's going to go out there and run the routes hard and make the plays that he can execute, right? If the ball's accurate, he's going to make the plays. And we saw that in Los Angeles. So I think it can definitely carry over here. Coleman, maybe just a little bit lost rookie season. We're just kind of getting slowly into the mix. Again, they decided to trade away that spot and let the Chiefs get Xavier Worthy. So they had to settle for Coleman. I think they had to bring him on a little bit more slowly. So again, I do like the idea of these guys, Palmer and Coleman, and they're playing with Josh Allen as downfield passing targets, a big arm quarterback. So somebody should produce a little bit more. We're just looking for the consistency. The worst thing would be like if they have a little committee approach with their tight ends and their wide receivers, and it's just situational that these guys split that kind of outside role, number one, for stretching the field. So I'm hopeful, but again, I'm with you. I want to get for the value of one of these guys later versus Khalil Shakir just doesn't excite me. He has a very low ceiling and a pretty shaky floor as well.
Yeah. And if we do think it's going to be the ball's going to be spread around, then Keon Coleman's probably the way to go because he is that guy who can make those really big plays and he doesn't need a ton of targets if he is going to be successful and, show up as the player that he was supposed to be when they drafted him. Now, another piece of news we got over the weekend that is making Jake Ferguson trend up. He got a big contract extension. He got 4 years, $52 million contract extension, which is very interesting because this is what Dalton Schultz was looking for a couple of years ago, right? And the Cowboys were like, no, you can leave. But with Jake Ferguson, they wanted to keep him. And even though they drafted Luke Schoonmaker a couple of years ago in the second round, and he did okay when Ferguson was out last year, they still wanted to hold down Ferguson. So I think that makes us feel better that he's not going to lose his job anytime soon. And I mean, he's sitting there as tight end 12. And does he have top 4 upside? No. But just 2 years ago, he was a tight end 9 on average at 8.3 points per game. That's not like league winning at all, but it is a doable guy that you can start week in and week out where he's not going to destroy you. Last year was terrible, tight end 29, only 5.4 points per game. But he only played a handful of games with Dak Prescott. He played 6 full games with Dak Prescott. And through that time, weeks 3 through 9, he was averaging nearly 8 targets per game, 8.2 points per game. So right there with his 2023 fantasy production. And he was averaging 53 receiving yards per game, too. That would have been 4th most receiving yards per game by a tight end this past year. And he's been the second on the team in targets the last 2 years. He was the second on the team in targets before he got injured by a massive chunk last year. And his biggest issues have always been touchdowns, but he gets the red zone targets. So let's say George Pickens helps this offense a bit, then maybe Ferguson can get those more touchdowns, right? Because he scored 0 last year after scoring very few the year prior. So I like Ferguson's value, and I think he should be trending up right now.
Yeah, I'm sure when Cowboys fans said, here comes a extension news, they're like, oh, here's Micah Parsons, and no, it's Jake Ferguson. So I don't know what's going on with Jerry Jones's head. Like, oh, we got to take care we can't get this done with Micah Parsons, so let's get Jake Ferguson aboard here. Maybe we had the Dak Prescott comment in mind where I need to get Jake Ferguson locked up here because Dak likes to throw to him. He's a comfort level guy for Dak. He's been thrown to the tight end since early in his career. And not necessarily, again, red zone is not maybe the roles of these guys, but just being all over the field and just like racking up that 6 for 70 game, right? You look up and it's, that's a decent game, right? For fantasy, when you look at it, 10 points and half point PPR, you'll take that if you get 6 for 70 from your tight end in a lot of weeks. Now, he's sitting there at tight end 12, and there's just like, it told you there's kind of a drop off when you get past the David Njoku, Evan Ingram, you start to creep into some doubts there on where you want to go at tight end. I think he's not going to be spectacular, but I think he can be solid for you if you put him in there and you're just looking for a starter and you wait a little bit. And I know he's not super exciting, but they're still going to throw to him quite a bit. This is why we said cool off on CeeDee Lamb a little bit, because Ferguson is still a big part of the offense. George Pickens is going to get his downfield share target. So they're going to steal a few things that Lamb does because they have to, right? They have to diversify this offense if Dak Prescott's going to be more effective and this team is going to be more successful winning games overall. So Ferguson has to be involved. Again, Dak trusts him. I think Dak may have gone and said, hey, I trust this guy even more than Dalton Schultz. Maybe lobbied his case. You just said things to help me. So again, I do like Ferguson. Again, don't get too excited and overdraft him. We're not going to move him up, but keep in mind that name, highlight that name for a very good value among the tight end one rankings of the top 12.
Yeah, we just discussed the Bills wide receiver group, and Dalton Kincaid could be struggling because of that. And he's going back to back with Dalton Kincaid. I'd rather go with Jake Ferguson for sure over
Good point.
Kincaid
Yeah.
next year. All right, we are going to go to the negative side now. There's two guys trending down, and Joe Mixon and Terry McLaurin. We will let you know why and our thoughts about them right after another quick break. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it all possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game. I've been eyeing tickets to the Red Sox versus Astros game in Houston in August, and I'll be using the Gametime app to buy my tickets. But yes, I'll be waiting up to closer to game time because, like they say, the prices really do drop. I use them all the time right before game day, and it's definitely the best ticketing app to use. It really is lowest price guarantee, and the seats are, you get the panorama view of your seats before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And the app is just so easy to use, and it just takes all the stress out of it. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we got some injury news about Mr. Joe Mixon of the Texans. He's expected to miss multiple weeks with an ankle foot injury during the preseason. We'll see if he can be back for week 1 or not. But Mixon's dealt with quite a bit of ankle injuries throughout his career. He had one last year, the high ankle sprain, and we saw how bad that messed him up because weeks 1 through 11, he was on fire, averaging 21 points per game. And then it went way down the second half of the season once he came back, especially like as just the wear and tear on his body kept continuing to end the season. Only 8.5 points per game. He finished the season as the running back 13 overall. And he's slipping right now in ranks. He's slipping all the way to running back 20 because of this injury and because of Nick Chubb signing. Are you worried about Joe Mixon? Do you think running back 20 is fair that he's falling?
Yeah, everything seems to be trending downward to the change of the offensive philosophy, potentially throwing the ball a little bit more, and also trying to get those big plays instead of just kind of being a little bit more conservative with the offense. But everything is kind of trending against him. And the Nick Chubb thing was, we thought, okay, this is not good at all because they're worried about his health if they're going to make a late signing of Chubb. And then the health concerns manifest almost immediately when they show up at training camp. Now, the foot ankle injury is a concern because it is something that he similarly has dealt with before in the past. He has a lot of wear and tear. Now, they're very optimistic. They say he's going to miss several weeks with the issue, but then they're like, oh, he should be back before the end of the preseason. So I guess if you do the math, several weeks could be 4 or 5, and then he would be back right before the start of the regular season. But these are some key reps he's missing. I don't know how that they're concerned at all if he's a veteran, right? They typically don't worry too much about those guys in training camp, but Nick Chubb is there. So it's a golden opportunity for Nick Chubb to show that he's got something left. We know he's had his share of injuries, but he's had less wear and tear. He's a little bit younger. So this backfield competition is a little bit more open here. Look, there's not a lot behind these guys either. You have the rookie out of USC, Woody Marks. You have Dameon Pierce hanging around. I don't figure Pierce is going to make the final roster here after all the good fortune he had just a couple of years ago. A lot of things have changed for Pierce since then. So I'm just not feeling this backfield at all, this offense in general. But I would take a shot on Chubb a lot later. I don't want a shot on Mixon at 20, but Chubb sitting at RB 52, he's pretty much free if you want to take him for your depth and take a shot at him.
Yeah, I mean, they have a new OC, they have a new offensive line, really,
Yeah.
and Nick Chubb is going to get all these reps and get the trust in those guys, and that's, Joe Mixon is missing that time. Also, Mixon has the second most career carries by any player on a current NFL roster right now, behind only Derrick Henry, who we know Derrick Henry is just absurd and not human. So definitely worries there for Joe Mixon. Now, Terry McLaurin, he did show up to camp. He didn't get his contract extension, but he's not holding out. However, he showed up with an ankle injury. We don't know if that ankle injury will be, feel much better. If he gets this contract extension, he'll be fine. But I am worried if this contract dispute continues, right, throughout the preseason. And it could be a slow start for him. I mean, we saw out of Brandon Ayuk last year that he dealt with this contract extension situation. They finally gave it to him right before the season, but he missed the off season, and he had to deal with all this mentally, and that drains you. And then you're upset with the team. And then, I mean, Brandon Ayuk ended up tearing his ACL. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Terry McLaurin, but even before the torn ACL, he was not producing at all. I do think this makes me worried about any player if they're going to miss the preseason and mentally they might not be all there, might be upset, especially with a guy like Terry McLaurin, who, he had a career year last year, but he was still wide receiver 15 on average. Even though he scored 13 touchdowns, the receiving yards still were not high. I mean, just over 1,000 yards in 17 games played, only 117 targets. So that could increase if they throw more. But with Deebo Samuel there, can we expect an increase? Right now, he's still at wide receiver 18, but I do think he should be trending down.
Yeah, I mean, he's trimmed down a little bit if you look at his finish from last year, just a few spots, but that I think wasn't factoring in all these latest developments here with him. And what I would watch while Terry McLaurin's holding in, that's, I guess, what you call it now, if you're kind of there, but you're not playing, I think you look at Deebo Samuel, see what connection develops there in this offense between Deebo and Jane Daniels, because Deebo's want to prove himself too, right? He kind of got cast off by the 49ers, and he was kind of their do-everything guy. So now he gets a second chance with a contending team. Maybe at some point these teams could meet in the playoffs and he could get some revenge or whatever. But he's on a team that has a shot at the Super Bowl. I mean, we just have to be realistic about it. So Deebo might be a little bit, hey, I got to run with this a little bit. And I don't know how much that chemistry is going to accelerate. Well, Terry McLaurin's gone, but that's another thing I would keep an eye on. Like, I think you're buyer beware a little bit with McLaurin. Again, that those touchdowns really inflated his value a little bit. I think he was more wide receiver 20. This team definitely wants to spread the ball around a little more. It's going to be capable of doing that with some of the weapons it has. But again, Deebo, I might be a little bit more interested now. Like, he's down there already in the ranks. Like, look, he's still a very top-notch playmaker when he gets the ball in his hands, and they just might need to figure out ways to do that here. So I think the timing for McLaurin is all bad here. Like, they need him to be on board. This team is a Super Bowl contender. I would be excited to be out there with this team. The only silver lining, Michelle, for all this is if you got McLaurin in Dynasty or Keeper, or you drafted him already, he's not going to get hurt more. So maybe he's holding himself out. He'll be at least fresh for you in the season. But yeah, you definitely have to be concerned a little about the rust here. Maybe the contract will come through here pretty soon, and then we'll be good to go. So all kinds of things that we have to consider here. But again, the Commanders' offense has so much upside. You definitely want to be tapped into it quite a bit. But again, don't overpay for McLaurin, and maybe don't underrate Samuel here and his importance to this offense.
Yeah. And if, the contract comes through soon and he's back at practice, the ankle injury's not hurting, then we can stop worrying as much. And I don't think his ranking would then be as concerning. But that will be it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Enjoy your night. Bye, y'all.